Hello and welcome to Who's the Boss? It's a Star Wars podcast from laughingplace.com. My name is Mike Celestino. I am your host. I'm the lead Southern California reporter and editorial director for Star Wars content at Laughing Place. This is episode 93 of Who's the Boss, and we are going to be talking about Star Wars, the Book of Boba Fett, episode 5. And for that discussion, I have invited back on the show my friend and the co-founder of Laughing Place, Doobie Moseley. Doobie, thank you for coming back on Who's the Boss to talk about your favorite topic, Star Wars, with me once again.
It is my pleasure to be here. My wife and your normal co-host is not available today, so I am happy to step in and help out. I know some of you regulars out there might be confused, thinking there's no way the normal, lovely co-host of this show is married to me. So I brought proof today. Here is our wedding picture from 1997. That is us. I am married. End of discussion.
And the people listening in the future will just have to take your word for it, I think, because they can't see it.
You know what's funny? That was the one tip she gave me. Don't forget, this is a podcast.
That's totally fair. They can go back. We are doing this live on the Laughing Place YouTube channel. So if you are listening to the audio version of this podcast, you can go and check it out. The video version is up on the Laughing Place YouTube. What else has been going on with you over at laughingplace.com? Obviously, you're wearing the shirt, the Disney Trivia live shirt. Tell us a little bit about what's been going on that show.
So we're really excited. I feel like I'm doing a Disney PR spot. We're really excited over at Disney Trivia Live because
sorry, I've become very formal for whatever reason. I go into the host mode, but yeah, let's keep it casual. That's fine.
So we've been doing Disney Trivia Live now for, it's coming up on 2 years, and we've been using Kahoot all this time. But I got so much pressure from my son to write my own program for this. I'm a coder, so our last contest actually was the first time we used a brand new custom program for playing Disney Trivia Live, which, from all the players' perspectives, does not mean that big. It's not that big a deal. But for me and my son, and for the spam bots that we no longer have to worry about, it's really exciting to have our own little program, and we're hoping to develop that now so we can have all kinds of new contests and different kinds of games and have a lot of fun with it. So that's ETL.
When you build a code like that, is that something you're doing pretty much from the ground up, or is it there like a template for like a trivia game that you can work from?
No, I started from the ground up. I mean, I use Kahoot as a model for how it should work, but all the code is from the ground up. I've been coding since I was 11 years old, which is probably before you were born. So it was a fun little project that my son kept pressuring me to do, and I'm glad I did. It was actually a lot of fun. And the other part of Disney Trivia I really should mention is sometimes we have special guests on, and our favorite special guest is right there, Mike Celestino, both himself and when he acts as producer and brings on really cool, like Emperor Palpatine or Santa Claus. And then something we've started doing more recently is we've been challenging, Mike is the head of Star Wars, as you know, here at Laughing Place. We also have Michael Mack, who's the head of Marvel. We have Tony, who kind of handles our animation. We've been challenging them to make sure they truly are the smartest at their job. So we have this thing called Keep Your Job, where we have them play against all the other players. And if they lose, then they are unemployed. So that's been a lot of fun, a little bit of pressure for them, but a lot of fun for us and our audience.
I was so relieved when I won the Keep Your Job contest because I was really genuinely nervous going into that, because it's a lot of, when you come in as the resident Star Wars guy or expert or whatever, which I don't call myself, but I am the Star Wars guy at Laughing Place. So I had a lot to prove. And then there was one question that I was iffy on. That was contested. It was a contested question, yes. But I had to fight my way back from that and finally came out on top, which was such a huge relief. And I thank you to Nick Morgan for putting that contest together.
Had you lost, that question might have kept you in your apartment. So we've done, I think, 3 of those so far, and so far everyone has kept their job. So it's been fun.
That's very good to hear. And you can watch and participate in Disney Trivia Live every Tuesday and Saturday evening, except for this week, because you guys are on a week-long hiatus, right?
Yeah, family's out of town, so our next one will be on Tuesday.
Great. So Tuesday, come back at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time on the Laughing Place YouTube channel for Disney Trivia Live. Doobie, this is your 3rd time on Who's the Boss. You have answered the 5 Star Wars questions, both level 1 and level 2, and that means by law You must answer the 5 Star Wars questions, level 3. Are you ready for this?
I am so ready.
Okay. Number 1, what is your favorite Star Wars book or comic and why?
So as we know, the former head of Star Wars for Laughing Place was myself, so I am quite the expert. That said, I've never read a Star Wars book or comic.
Okay.
So I had to use my imagination on this one, and I watch a lot of Star Wars headlines. I've seen Mike talk about a lot of books, and were I to choose to read one, I would start with Star Wars from another point of view, because that's just such an awesome concept. And I would love to check out short stories, because I can't read for very long without getting bored. So nice short stories of stuff I'm familiar with, but from another point of view. That sounds so interesting that I might actually read it someday.
Yeah, it is a great concept. I feel like I was very snarky in my reviews of those books.
You were. Were you nicer? I might have read it by now. But...
because I joked that it was a celebration of the 40th anniversary of Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back. They did it for a few years later. And my joke was that it was also a 40% success rate on the stories, which I feel terrible about because I know some of the people who have written the story. But I mean, the ones written by the people I know were all excellent. But yeah, they take like background characters from the movies and tell their stories basically that overlap with the main narrative of Star Wars. It is an interesting concept. I think it is kind of a hit or miss in execution, but I definitely recommend checking those out for the stuff that is good. It is very good in those books. So it's a recommend for me. Sure. Why not? Number 2, if you could own a life-size working replica of any Star Wars vehicle, what would you choose?
So a lot of these some of these anyway, are going to go back to my personal Star Wars life. I'm old. I vaguely remember seeing the original Star Wars in theaters. I remember I fell asleep right after the sands scared me to death, and then I fell asleep.
Okay.
But Empire, I remember very well. I lived down the street from a theater one summer. I saw it literally every day. Empire and Superman 2 are so ingrained into my mind. And so
Kneel before Zod.
Exactly. And Hoth, of course. So I am going with I say AT-ATs. I know some of you Star Wars people say AT-AT, but to me, they will always be AT-ATs. And I feel like I can remember sitting in the chair, Hoth, and these things starts walking. And that's just such an incredible feeling that I would love to recreate that feeling every day by having an AT-AT in my backyard.
That would be pretty sweet. I don't think anyone has said that yet. And yeah, that's a great choice. And there's a terrific joke on Rick and Morty, one episode where they said, I built a replica of a Star Wars AT-AT, or as the millennials say, AT-AT.
Exactly.
But I don't know. I'm fine with either one. AT-AT makes sense to me because that's the way it's written out. But then also when I think about an AT-ST, which is the smaller chicken walker one, like, well, that if you say AT-ST with that, why wouldn't you say AT-AT with the other one? I don't know.
But when AT-ATs first came out, there was no AT-ST yet, right? And so
there is actually an AT-ST running around under the AT-ATs on Hoth in The Empire Strikes Back. So yeah, they debuted around the same time. Yeah.
Fine.
I think they may have just called it a chicken walker at that point, and maybe the name AT-ST came around in Return of the Jedi, though, so you might be off the hook on that one.
Right around the time George Lucas started ruining everything. Hi, Rebecca. Thank you for letting me sit in today.
Number 3, do you have a favorite non-human sentient Star Wars alien species?
Yes. As of this morning, when I did research on this question. So I think I ended up on a site that had 50 favorite Star Wars characters. And I just went down the list. And my problem with Star Wars characters is that most of them are ugly and they're really disturbing for me to look at. And I can't look at them. They bother me. But these characters are so clean, so sleek. I could look at them all day. So you're going to have to help me on the pronunciation. Is this a Kaminoan?
That's about right. I think that's what I've heard. Yeah. Kaminoan. I think you could probably also say, because their planet is Kamino. I've heard Kaminoan. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going with Kaminoan because I'm the expert. I remember Attack of the Clones. I happen to love that movie. I don't yell at me, but I love Attack of the Clones. And I remember this planet was just so clean. I love Stark. I love clean. I love Cloud City. I love cities, planets. And this is just pristine. And it was funny. I don't remember anything, I forget everything as soon as I see it, but I'm reading the description of these characters, and apparently they're quite evil, and maybe the whole reason there is an empire, according to the article I read. But
I would
they look
call
cool.
them, if we're going by like the D&D, what do you call it? The alliance or whatever. I would call them lawful neutral, I think. I wouldn't call them good or evil. They do work for the bad guys in the prequels building the
But they facilitate evil very efficiently.
yes, they basically are working for whoever's paying them, kind of like a bounty hunter or whatever. And they do kind of bring about the empire by creating the clone army and stuff. But if you watch the Bad Batch, there's one of them who's actually kind of trying to work against the empire and ends up getting arrested at the end of season 2 and brought into custody. And it's implied that Kaminoan goes on to create the cloning program that eventually clones Emperor Palpatine. So, yeah, they're very smart. They are scientists, most of those guys, and
most importantly, they're not gross. So that is my
right.
number one.
Yeah, they kind of look like the aliens from Close Encounters a little bit.
A movie I've never seen, but I've heard that.
Oh my gosh! Oh, one of my favorites. Oh,
I've tried so many times. It's a little boring.
Okay. See, boring is right up my alley. I love boring. Number 4. What is your favorite piece of Star Wars music and why?
If I were to be 100% honest, I would probably say the Imperial March, but that's just too cliche. So I'm going to go with one that's completely cliche as well, and that is the Duel of the Fates. I remember seeing this movie in theaters after literally waiting overnight to go watch it. Phantom Menace, and I remember how much I loved this movie because everyone that saw this on opening day loved this movie and didn't get any sense until a few months later. But even if you realize it's not a great movie, this is a great scene, and the music behind it is awesome. And I got to see go to Hollywood Bowl once and see John Williams conduct it live, and that memory's in my head. This is just a spectacular piece of music, and I love it.
It was so odd to see a music video for what is basically an orchestral score with a choir singing, playing on, I think it was Total Request Live with like Carson Daly in 1999. That was like one of the top 40 hits during that week or whatever.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it was crazy. It's definitely a great piece and a great scene. And I remember walking out of the Phantom Menace the first time and going, I think my literal verbatim reaction was, oh, that wasn't too bad. Because I had heard rumors that it was not going to be great,
there was no way we were not going to like that movie. We were so hyped for it. There were Death Star beach balls bouncing around before it started. Right. Everything that came on, we're like, yay! It could have been whatever, and we were going to walk out of there going, that was the greatest movie of all time.
I also remember that
time to fix that.
There's that moment where R2D2 rotates his head and kind of looks at the camera, and the whole audience like erupted in applause. Like, so silly. But yeah, definitely fun and definitely Star Wars. So number 5, the 5th and final of the 5 Star Wars questions, level 3. If you could go back in time and be present for the filming of any Star Wars live action scene, which would it be? We're really getting in the weeds with these questions.
So this was a hard one, but once again, I went back to my roots, to the original trilogy, and specifically Empire Strikes Back. I can remember they go, as I mentioned, I like nice, clean, sleek. So Cloud City with Colt 45 man himself, Billy D. Williams. I love that location. And there's the scene where he's charming everybody, and he's about to take them to dinner, and I'm fooled. I didn't know there's ulterior stuff going on here. And so when he opens that door and Vader's in there in this beautiful dining room, that was just so spectacular to me. So sure, I'd love to go back and see how that whole thing took place. This is the scene right here. And mostly I just want to see that this is a cool dining room. I wouldn't mind hanging out here, maybe have lunch here.
Yeah, the funny thing about that scene is that they do seem to sit down for lunch. And the joke for many years was like, what do you think they all talked about during that meal? And I think they did it on Robot Chicken. Like, what was that lunch like?
So anyway, that's my scene, and just because I love it, even though it has Han Solo, who's not my favorite character.
Oh gosh, what do you got to get? What do you have against Han Solo?
He's too cliche. Everyone loves Han Solo, but he's kind of a jerk.
Okay, fair enough. What do you know about the Fraggles?
I will be quiet now.
All right, there's a revival of the TV show Fraggle Rock that I grew up on. It was made by the Jim Henson Company. It's on Apple TV Plus. I've seen now the first like half of the season, and I think it's excellent. It's wonderful. It's beautiful, and I'm really impressed with what they've done. I had the wonderful opportunity to interview some of the folks involved with this show, including the showrunners and the executive producer, but I also got to talk with two of the Fraggles themselves, Wembley and Moki. These are characters that I knew as a child and loved, and I thought they were real when I was a child. So it's just amazing and surreal to be able to talk with them. So I'm going to play this 5-minute interview that I did with Wembley and Moki. If you're watching live on YouTube, you're not going to see this, but you can after the show. After you're done watching this, go watch it on our YouTube channel. But if you're listening, you're going to hear my interview with Wembley and Moki. And that's my interview with Wembley and Moki Fraggle from Fraggle Rock Back to the Rock. It's available now on Apple TV Plus. Please go and watch it. It's really, really excellent. And that's going to bring us to Star Wars headlines for this week. There's a bunch of stuff. I wasn't expecting there to be much stuff, and then stuff kept getting added. Let's just quickly go through this because I want to get to the episode discussion. First up, we do the Book of Boba Fett, the new character poster. The only one that came out this week was the modifier from last week's episode. What did you think of this character, Doobie?
I am not a huge fan of the Runaways in this show, I got to admit. So, I mean, it's fine, but I'm not a huge fan.
Okay. Yeah, they're very controversial characters. People say they don't fit into Tatooine. I'm kind of on the fence about them. I don't love them. I don't hate them. But I'm okay with them being in the show. They also released Volume 1 of the Book of Boba Fett soundtrack, which is available to stream and download if you want to do such a thing. I'm waiting for the vinyl release. I like vinyl, as we've talked about before. I'm all about physical media. So,
yes, which is why you have the ever increasing apartment sizes.
yeah, we keep having to move to bigger apartments to make room for all the stuff that you see behind me here today. Also from Book of Boba Fett, our own Alex Reif's behind the scenes post from the Television Critics Association's panel about the Book of Boba Fett with Tamura Morrison and Ming-Na Wen. You can go and read that on laughingplace.com. There were a few good tidbits that came out of that Q&A with the 2 stars of the Book of Boba Fett. So go and check that out. Up next from Star Wars Ahsoka, which is another live action series coming to Disney Plus. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, the actress who's been in a bunch of stuff, and I can't think of any right off the top of my head.
Most importantly, she was the star of 10 Cloverfield Lane.
That's right. And my favorite of hers is Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Now it just occurred to me. She was Ramona Flowers in that one. And yeah, 10 Cloverfield Lane with John Goodman. That's right. She's going to be joining the cast of Ahsoka. We don't know as who. They're keeping that under wraps, but we do know she's going to be in the cast alongside Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka. You excited for that series?
Is it on Disney Plus?
Yes.
Is it live action?
Yes.
I'm very excited.
Okay. It's going to have Grand Admiral Thrawn, most likely.
Star Wars on Disney Plus has not disappointed. So until it does, I'm extremely excited. Live action. Animated, I don't watch because I'm an adult.
Yeah, the man who runs who launched a Disney news website is anti-animation. We got some news about Lucasfilm's adaptation of Children of Blood and Bone. This is a fantasy novel that is now no longer at Lucasfilm. They're moving to Paramount. So this movie is no longer going to be made by Lucasfilm under the Walt Disney Company. For whatever reason, it has moved over to Paramount. Any thoughts on that, Doobie?
Has Disney purchased Paramount now, or it's going to a whole nother studio?
It's just moving to another studio. I don't really know more information than that.
I'm cool with that. Lucasfilm is doing so well with Star Wars right now. Let's focus on that. And then we've got who's this character? This other Harrison Ford guy? Didn't he have a movie coming out?
Yeah, Indiana Jones 5 coming out next year or the year after.
They need to put every inch of creativity focus they have into making sure that's better than Indy 4.
I sure hope so. I sure hope so. I do like when Lucasfilm does stuff that's not Star Wars or indie. They obviously did a bunch of that. If you listen to Who's the Boss over the past year or so, we covered pretty much everything. And I was always interested in George Lucas's taste in projects that he chose to produce, and what it said about him as a person. So that kind of carried over, or I thought it would carry over, to Kathleen Kennedy or whoever is running things there. And it's a disappointment to me, because I heard that book was really interesting and really compelling. But I'm sure we'll check it out when Paramount releases it too. So up next is, there are new Star Wars games in development from Respawn Entertainment. That's a development company working under EA, Electronic Arts Games. They made a bunch of Star Wars games. Well, Respawn did Jedi Fallen Order, which was really, really good. I really enjoyed that game. And they're going to be doing a sequel to that officially, and a couple other games that they're developing. Have you ever played a Star Wars video game, Doobie?
I have watched you play one, I think, once on YouTube.
Okay. Yeah,
Does that count?
The Sims?
Yeah, that's the one.
All right.
I mean, I'm sure back in the 80s I played the old Vector Star Wars thing.
Yeah.
Arcades, but that's different.
Well, I'm very psyched for the sequel to Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. They definitely left that kind of open-ended at the end of that game for a follow-up, so that should be pretty good. Big news from the Galactic Star Cruiser experience opening at Walt Disney World. We got to look at the itinerary and the maps in the Play Disney Parks app. You can go and check out all that stuff at Walt Disney World. You can see the layout of all the rooms of the Halcyon Star Cruiser, and you can kind of go through hour by hour and look at what you'll be doing if you go on this experience. Did this change your opinion at all of whether or not you're interested in going and doing this?
I'm interested because I'm a Disney fan and I'm your number one Star Wars fan, so of course I'm interested. I have had high hopes that they are just saving the incredibleness of this, and we don't know how good it's going to be until it actually opens.
Yeah,
seeing this itinerary be released has not helped me hold on to those hopes, but I'm still hanging by a thread that there's a lot more here than is apparent, because what is here is not that interesting.
It very much reads like the itinerary of a Disney cruise to me, because we did that a couple years ago. We did the Star Wars Day at Sea on the Disney Cruise Line, and there's a lot of activities, and they're all kind of leisurely and fun, but nothing that I would call like terribly immersive theater exciting. But like you, I'm guessing that stuff is going to be played out more organically rather than show up on the schedule.
And I mean, just because it says Star Wars, Jedi lightsaber training or whatever, I have in my mind what that is, because that's been going on at the parks forever. But this could be a totally different experience. Each one of these could actually be, an immersive show.
Yeah.
You show up for it, and then this happens and that happens, and someone pops in. So that's my hope, that there's a whole lot more here than it seems. That they want to make it feel on the outside like, yeah, you're just going on this relaxing cruise, but it's actually a show that they put together for you.
That sounds right to me. And if I had to guess, I would say that's probably the intent of this itinerary coming out. So up next, we've got a book review that I wrote for laughingplace.com. The book is called Star Wars Jedi Artifacts. There it is. And this is from Insight Editions. And it's less of a book and more of a collection of merchandise, actually. It's kind of a box set. It comes with a dozen kind of fun little pieces of memorabilia that tie into the Jedi Order. One of which is a buildable foam replica or model of the Jedi Vector ship from Star Wars The High Republic, which is fun. I thought when I was building this, I thought it was going to be like a glider and I could throw it like a paper airplane, and it didn't turn out. It just collapsed on the ground.
It needs zero gravity, man.
Yeah, but there you can see a image of the other stuff that comes with it. There's a button. There's a couple keychains with Ahsoka's lightsaber handles and some documents and stuff like that. It's pretty fun. It gives you kind of a broad history of the Jedi Order. It's a good gift, I think, for people who are into the Jedi. I've talked about how the Jedi are one of the least interesting parts of Star Wars to me, except when they're like almost extinct. I like people like looking into the history of the Jedi. So this is kind of what that's about too, from a earthly perspective, finding about that history. And then I also reviewed a comic book this week called Star Wars The High Republic Trail of Shadows #4, and I have that here. This is written by Daniel Jose Older. It's a continuation of this miniseries that is kind of like a murder mystery, and it's a very much like film noir inspired. I have really been enjoying this comic series all the way through pretty much, and I highly recommend it. It's very dark. It's almost kind of disturbing, and it's kind of going down the horror path for Star Wars, which people have been clamoring for. I know people constantly are asking Lucasfilm to make a horror movie set in Star Wars. I would really like to see that, and this is kind of that in comic book form. So I highly recommend this comic for sure.
So you mentioned that, Mike. Are you kind of disappointed Disney seems to have given up on the Star Wars stories, which kind of gave them the opportunity to do completely different kinds of genres within the Star Wars universe?
Yeah, I would have loved to see that continue, but I think I don't know. I saw the silver lining of that when Solo didn't do too well, and they abandoned that plan. I think they were probably going to do a Star Wars story movie every other year, but then when Solo didn't perform that great, they kind of switched gears and focused on the TV aspect a little bit more, and I think they shifted a couple of those ideas to the TV projects. Like I'm guessing we would have gotten an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie if Solo had been a big hit, but instead we're getting a Ewan McGregor starring Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show on Disney Plus. So I don't know. I think it's going to come out better in the end.
But we're not, at least so far. You know, I start to imagine they're going to do the Obi-Wan Kenobi series as a comedy or something. And I like the concept that we can get really like the heist movie almost that we got with Rogue One, that we can get different genres within the universe. I hope they do take advantage of Disney Plus and give us that at some point.
Yeah, even if they did like not even a movie, but like an hour-long special or something that's just like, oh, somebody's trapped in a cave and there's a Wampa after them or something. Like they did like Star Wars Visions, which is a lot of like non-canon animation in the anime style or whatever, and they didn't worry about, oh, is this gonna tie into the canon and affect other stuff that's happening in Star Wars. I would like to see more stuff like that for sure. We got some news from Hasbro, the toy company, this week. They've expanded their deal with Lucasfilm to make a bunch more Star Wars toys. They've been doing this for a very long time. Obviously, Hasbro bought Kenner, I think, in the 90s. So Kenner was the company that originally did the Star Wars toys back in the late 70s. So this is a tradition continuing really from the beginning of Star Wars. They're going to be making more Star Wars toys for the years to come. And they've also got the license back to make Indiana Jones toys, which will tie into the upcoming film there, this is all very exciting news to me. Always thrilled to get more Indiana Jones stuff because it's very few and far between that we've gotten some Indiana Jones toys, basically when the movies come out, and that's it. They don't really focus on that property that much in between the films. So happy to get more of that. Then if you go to YouTube and the Laughing Place YouTube channel, you can check out a big long unboxing that I did yesterday. I put it up yesterday of Hasbro's Bring Home the Bounty Star Wars collection. It was a big, huge box that they mailed me, which we get every once in a while from Hasbro to open and review. And it's just a bunch of Mandalorian and Star Wars products from Hasbro. A whole lot of fun stuff. And I also did one that's just about Galactic Snack and Grogu, which is one of the high profile toys to come out of The Mandalorian Season 2 that Hasbro was actively promoting. And that's a lot of fun. You can watch that over at the Laughing Place YouTube channel that we're on right now, actually. Lastly, in Star Wars headlines for this week, we're going to talk about the recent merchandise that has been announced or revealed. Usually this would be Rebecca's purview, Rebecca's little segment here called Sandcrawler Selections. Now, I picked out a few that I saw. Did you happen to bring these up, Doobie?
Maybe.
The creature carvings that we got from Galaxy's Edge.
Is that this?
Yeah, okay, great. So there you can go to the creature stall in Galaxy's Edge and buy these I was told these are limited edition, so once they're gone, they're gone. I got a Rancor. I don't have it with me right now; it's in the other room. But I really like the look of these. I'm more attached to the Rancor because it's original trilogy stuff. But there's also a Lothcat you can get, and these will attach to the bottom of the hilt from your lightsaber from Savi's workshop. If you had built a custom lightsaber over at Savi's workshop, you can get these and switch out the base of your hilt. It's a very cool attachment to pick up over there at Galaxy's Edge. Then also there's the Fig Pin Mandalorian Season 2 pins. There you go. Looks like one of Din Djarin holding up Grogu, kind of saying goodbye there at the end of Season 2. Are there other ones in that selection? Oh yeah, Luke Skywalker. That's kind of cool. I think this might actually be the first piece of Luke Skywalker merchandise to come out tied in with the Mandalorian. Cool. So that's pretty neat.
Good point.
And a Dark Trooper. So these are cool pins. You can check out the post on laughingplace.com. Place your order there. And also we've got bonus bounties. I'm not sure what that is. Do we have that post?
I do not. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, you can go to laughingplace.com and search for bonus bounties. You can search for Bring Home the Bounty. And there's a whole bunch of posts up there about recent merchandise that's come out from the Lucasfilm licensees and all the Star Wars and Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett stuff that is hitting store shelves. Okay, that's going to bring us to the end of Star Wars headlines for this week and to our main topic. And I have a feeling this is going to be a in-depth, lengthy conversation because there's a lot to say about the Book of Boba Fett, Chapter 5. The title of this episode is Return of the Mandalorian, which when I saw that, my eyes kind of rolled a little bit. So I would say, in my opinion, the worst thing about this episode is the title. And I think that's a great thing because it's all uphill from there. It's kind of a cliche title, but it does call back to the title of Return of the Jedi and whatever. Doobie, before we go into the episode discussion, I wanted to ask you, what were your expectations going into the Book of Boba Fett as a series, and how did you feel about the previous 4 episodes before this week's episode?
So I love The Mandalorian a lot, both seasons. Just look forward every week to watching them. I expected the Book of Boba Fett to be in that caliber. And for me, it was. I realized for a lot of fans, it wasn't. But for me, it was. I'm not that deep a Star Wars person, but it just had the right atmosphere, the right vibe. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Really, the only thing I don't like about it are those kids and their mangy toys. But other than that, and I love getting what to me is completely new backstory of the Sand people and all of that. Seeing Boba Fett type seeing Jabba the Hutt type creatures in different settings. I've read nothing. This is all new to me, and it's just fascinating to explore the world like that. So I'm loving the Book of Boba Fett. All 4 episodes before this one, I totally loved. The Roger Rodriguez one would be my least favorite probably, but still, I totally loved it. Every week.
Can we bring up Kyle's comment here? He said this episode was a backdoor pilot for a show that 1 already exists and 2 is far more interesting. And I kind of agree with that, kind of going into our discussion of this episode, which was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, who directed a couple episodes of The Mandalorian, the one called Sanctuary in season 1 and The Heiress in season 2. She's also done some shorts and music videos, but I think The Mandalorian before this was really the only long form live action stuff that she had directed. Obviously, she's better known as an actress from a bunch of stuff, Jurassic World and The Village and a whole bunch of movies and stuff. And
Lady in the Water.
That's right. Am I wrong about The Village? Was she the lead in The Village?
No, she's in both.
Okay, yeah. Lady in the Water as well. M. Night Shyamalan, recurring actress. And she's also, of course, famously the daughter of Ron Howard, who has a lot of ties to Star Wars. 2, the episode was written by Jon Favreau, as have all of them been so far. And I would say that when I heard she was going to be making one, I was happy to hear that. When I heard she'd be making a Book of Boba Fett episode, because I think she's definitely improved. I think you can see the improvement over those 3 episodes that she's directed. If you go back and watch Sanctuary, I think Sanctuary might be my least favorite episode of season 1. of The Mandalorian. And then the second one she directed was much better. The action was better choreographed to me. And then this one, I thought she like knocked it out of the park. I thought it was great. It's been my favorite episode of the Book of Boba Fett so far, which is like Kyle said, it's odd that the best episode of the Book of Boba Fett is basically an episode of The Mandalorian. I don't know, Doobie, what did you think of this Return of the Mandalorian episode?
It clearly is the best episode so far, but it is an episode of The Mandalorian. It's not an episode of Book of Boba Fett. It doesn't detract to me from the fact that I'm thoroughly enjoying the Book of Boba Fett. This is just, an episode of The Mandalorian. There is in no way is this an episode of the Book of Boba Fett, in zero way.
Yeah, this almost could have been. It almost could have been like another. It could have been like the 9th episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian, except for that last scene where Fennec Shan shows up. It's almost like I compared it to Nick Fury, Samuel L. Jackson showing up and recruiting the Avengers at the end of that. At the end of every Avengers, Iron Man movie or whatever. But yeah, I thought it was really great, really entertaining, and it's mostly people talking, which is this just goes to prove my point that character stuff is always more interesting to me, at least. I can't speak for everyone, than action. There is some action in this episode. There's some training. There's some Darksaber duels and stuff. There's some flying around in the ship. But the most interesting stuff is people talking to each other. When you know those characters, you're getting to know these characters, and you know their relationships, and you know what's going on in the world around them. It's really interesting to see them just talk about those things. We got some more history about Mandalore and stuff, but I think we should just kind of go through. This is what we've been doing in these recaps, just kind of going through each scene and talking about what we thought.
I'll just say one more thing, because in terms of people saying the best episode of Boba Fett's the episode of Mandalorian, this episode reminded me a lot of 2 episodes from my all-time favorite series, Lost. One being Across the Sea, which is when they give the total backstory on the Man in Black and Jacob. Yeah. And then the other being, I think it's called The Other 48 Days, where they give the backstory on the tailies. And both of those episodes are awesome, and both have nothing to do with the main Lost story you've been watching. But to me, that just, they're perfect setups for what's to come. And that does not, in my mind, at all detract from the quality of Lost, the fact that some of the best episodes don't even involve the characters. And so I put this in that same boat. The fact that it happens to be one that we already know from a different series shouldn't detract from Book of Boba Fett. Okay, off my soapbox.
No, I absolutely agree. And in fact, this is not the first time that Lost has come up in these discussions, because there was that moment, I think, in the previous episode where Boba Fett saw the flares go up in the sky from what we saw in one of the episodes of The Mandalorian, and that immediately brought to mind Lost, because that always happened on Lost, where you would see something happen in one episode, and then like a season later, they would show that same event from somebody else's perspective. Yeah. And you'd see what that person was up to during that same time. So yeah, I do think that has become part of the language of TV storytelling and has worked its way in here, which is great, because I love that kind of stuff where we're just kind of fleshing out the universe. We're checking in on other characters. We're filling in the gaps and checking in on this character who we know and love from The Mandalorian. So let's start at the beginning of this episode and kind of go through each scene. It opens in a space butcher shop, which I thought was interesting. And this is right out of, to me, it's right out of The Sopranos, which I didn't mention in my Easter egg list, but The Sopranos are a crime family that work out of a butcher shop. So that was a little bit of a nod to the mafia genre, mob movie genre as well. And
what are they butchering?
That's something that I could not figure out, what those big slabs of beef were supposed to be.
So in the concept art at the end of the show, they show heads as well in this.
Okay.
Big like ram type heads. So I thought maybe based on that, you might have some idea of what they're theoretically butchering.
I didn't know. I haven't been paying too close attention to the concept art because I'm trying not to let it affect my understanding of the actual canon, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, sure. There were changes, because I know the Rhodian kid on the airplane, quote unquote, later on is in the concept art. He's a human. Yeah. So I think if I focus on that too much, it starts to confuse me a little bit. But I will go and look at that concept art later on and try to figure out what these creatures are supposed to be being chopped up in the space butcher shop there. So what do you think about the fact that Din Djarin has evidently returned to bounty hunting in the wake of season 2 of The Mandalorian?
You got to make a living, right?
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. What this scene reminded me of, by the way, you mentioned The Sopranos. I don't know, something about the look of this place, not necessarily this scene, but it reminded me of the scene in Dark Knight where I think it's the crime bosses and he takes out everyone and he does the pencil thing and he hands them the thing. I don't know. It felt like that kind of environment. Totally off topic.
No, I think both of those things, The Mandalorian and The Dark Knight, are both paying homage to the mafia movie genre, which these things keep coming up here. And the color palette of that shot that you've got up on screen right now is definitely right out of The Dark Knight. Like those deep blues there. I see what you mean for sure.
Yeah. But I don't know. Got to make a living. This is what he knows. What else is he going to do?
Yeah, but he also seems to be doing this for kind of an ulterior purpose, because he returns to there's a big fight sequence. So we see that he still has the Darksaber that he acquired at the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian. He's trying to claim this bounty on this mob boss's head, literally his head, because he ends up taking his head in the end. But first there's this big fight where he's using the Darksaber and he's not very good at it. In fact, he slices his own leg open and causes himself a pretty bad injury during this fight. But he does end up on top in the end, and he takes the guy's head. That immediately reminded me of this movie that I watched in college called Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. Have you heard of this film?
I have not heard of this film.
This is a movie by a director named Sam Peckinpah. This is like a film school kind of film. And yeah, we watched that in college. And the image of Din Djarin carrying this guy's head in that sack, I went and double checked it, but it's taken right out of that movie. And these guys, Jon Favreau and Robert Rodriguez and all these guys are huge film nerds. So I would not be surprised at all if that was an intentional reference to that kind of a cult film. It's kind of a neo-Western by Sam Peckinpah. But anyway, he brings the head.
Before we leave that,
yeah, absolutely, please do.
Okay. Do these people remind you of that Twilight Zone episode with the pig people?
So these are Klaatuinian aliens. I know what you're saying. This is the one where the lady's face is bandaged through the whole episode, and at the end they take off the bandage and she's a human, and all the doctors are like, "Oh, she's so terribly ugly." And then you see all the doctors' faces, and they're all weird, like pig
and
people.
They're all Clitorian Mangans or whatever.
Yeah, but I know what you mean there.
All right,
for sure. Okay, so he brings this head to another crime boss working in the same kind of space station. Oh, we should talk a little bit about that space station, because it's a giant ring floating in space.
Oh my, so cool.
Yeah. Did that remind you of anything from movies or TV shows past, or did that bring to mind any sci-fi?
I swear it did, and yet I tried and could not place it. I tried so hard.
Okay. So what I thought of was 2001: A Space Odyssey, when he's running around the ring of the Discovery 1 is the name of the spaceship in that film. Now, a lot of people, I've never played the Halo video games, but a lot of people are saying this is right out of Halo. There's a big space station that looks just like that. I don't know if that's supposed to be a reference to that or whatever. But the other thing I thought of was Christopher Nolan's film Interstellar, where there's I don't know if it's a space station or a planet or whatever, but it's inverted. And if you look up when you're standing on the ground, you look up, there's another ground above you going up over your head. Spencer in the comments said it's made me think of Halo as well. So I guess a lot of people are seeing Halo in there. I haven't played that game. So
what is it? Is it a planet? Is it a moon? Is it a space station? What exactly is this?
I would call it a space station, but I'm not sure. I don't know if they've released anything about what the actual name of it is in universe, but it's certainly an interesting looking location. I would like to see more stuff like that, kind of outside the box, instead of just going planet to planet in Star Wars.
Or just staying on Tatooine.
Or just, yeah. Oh, that's the other thing. Because you had messaged me, or you said in the Slack, in the Laughing Place Slack, that you were thinking of me when you saw that they visited a different location. And yeah, I had been complaining about never leaving Tatooine in the Book of Boba Fett, and so I was happy to get out in the galaxy there and see some other stuff. That definitely made me happy. Okay, so he brings the head to this alien's called a Ishi Tib, which I knew from my action figure collecting back in the day. I still collect action figures, but this parrot-looking alien is an Ishi Tib, and he delivers the head, and she tells him the location of the Mandalorian covert, which is also kind of hidden on the lower levels of this space station. So he has to follow this series of, it looks like almost like black light, hidden or infrared hidden arrows and messages on the walls in the sub-level of the space station. And he shows up at this covert and meets up with his old friends, the Armorer, played by Emily Swallow, and Paz Vizsla, voiced by Jon Favreau. Were you happy to see these guys?
Yeah. So there's the scene. Do I have it? I'm sorry, I don't. But when he first sees, I guess this is it from the reverse angle, but when she's standing over there looking out like that, am I the only person that thought of, I think his name is Heimdall from Thor, who stands there and just does nothing but stand there and guard the portal or whatever? That totally reminded me of that.
Yeah, I could see that. That did not come to mind for me, but yeah, I can see what you're talking about there for sure. So we get into some Mandalore history here. There's a sequence where they're talking about the Night of 1,000 Tears, I think it's called, or the Great Purge is another name for it, when the Empire basically destroyed the planet Mandalore and killed thousands and thousands of Mandalorians. We don't know too much about when this actually happened, because we've seen Mandalore pre-destruction in the series Star Wars Rebels, which takes place not too long before A New Hope, Episode 4. So this must happen sometime after that. Any thoughts on this kind of flashback sequence, Doobie?
Yeah, I liked it here. I also liked it in Terminator. I think it worked very well in both. I like this particular flashback sequence. All of the lore, people say, and you must do this, and these, that just makes me laugh. I'm sorry. I'm sure it's for someone. It's not for me.
So I think it does answer a lot of questions that people have had about why things have happened a certain way, especially considering the character Bo-Katan Kryze, who they mention in this episode but does not show up. She's played by Starbuck from Battlestar Galactica.
Thank you.
What's the actress's name? You know it.
That's her official name.
Yeah, it's Starbuck. Anyway, they talk about why she wasn't able to accept the sword, the Darksaber, a little bit more. So we get a little bit more information about that. I think people were kind of asking, because the information that we got in Rebels was a little bit different from what we saw in The Mandalorian. So they're just kind of drawing a line between those two things and explaining the concept of having to win that Darksaber in battle, just kind of driving that point home a little bit more from what we heard in The Mandalorian. So I appreciated that. I think people who are keeping track of that lore are more into that than a casual fan like you may be. So I totally understand kind of your eyes kind of glossing over.
Yeah, and it's not so much the information as just there's something specific about how that's presented with the words, specific words chosen, and the ominousness of it. That's just doesn't click for me.
Well, I think that they are definitely building towards something that's going to happen probably in the Mandalorian series proper. I don't know how many seasons that show's going to go, but if I had to guess, and if I had to predict how that show's going to end, I'm thinking they're going to retake the planet Mandalore. In all likelihood, we're going to see a mythosaur, which they also reference in this episode. I bet that we're going to see one of those in the flesh, and there's going to be a big climax on Mandalore where they retake the planet and rebuild the Mandalorian society and stuff. So I think that's kind of what all this is leading toward. If we consider this interconnected Disney Plus Star Wars universe as a whole, I think that's where all this is headed. So it'll all add up to something in the end, I guess, is what I'm getting at there. But it may not make 100% sense just yet. They rebuild the Forge. Speaking of rebuilding things, Din Djarin helps the armorer rebuild the forge, which we've seen in The Mandalorian, and she builds it here on the space station. And he asks her to reforge that Beskar spear that he got in The Mandalorian into some armor for Grogu, which I thought was very interesting. What did it look like she was building to you?
You're asking the wrong person.
Okay. So there's a shot where she drops all these little chain links, and I thought, okay, she's going to make a little suit of chain link, chain mail armor for Grogu. That's got to be what she's making, right?
Okay, that makes more sense because I'm thinking earrings, and I didn't know Yoda creatures had more than 2 ears, and it was so confusing. So that makes a lot more. Maybe they're toys for him. I know he likes to play with a lot of toys.
Right.
But
she
yours
says,
makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. Again, if I had to predict, I think we're going to see Grogu in some chainmail armor before this is all over, which I think will really be fun. Kyle says she's donating pop tabs to Ronald McDonald House, which is pretty funny. So she says the Beskar spear shouldn't really even exist because Beskar is intended to be used as basically armor instead of a weapon. So she wants to craft a armor for somebody. He says the foundling, Grogu, and she helps him out with that. Then we get the training sequence. He doesn't know how to use the Darksaber yet, and she's helping him out with that. What did you think of this whole scene?
It was kind of cool seeing him struggle with the Darksaber, and I mean, I presume that takes a fair amount of acting, and I think he did a good, because I doubt it actually gets heavier as he uses it. So that was pretty cool. It was fun to watch him struggle with that. And this Darksaber, I'm sorry, this is cooler looking than any lightsaber ever was. It is awesome.
Yeah, I do think the Darksaber is really cool. I have one somewhere. Hasbro sent me a toy one to test out about a year ago. But yeah, it's certainly really sweet looking. And there's that fun shot where he gets knocked off the catwalk and you're like, oh, but then, yeah, he just flies right back up using his jetpack. And you're like, oh, yeah, he has a jetpack. There's no big deal.
I like when it gets so heavy that he starts scraping it along the ground and it's just making this fiery whatever through. I mean, you only can do that so many times before you cut the thing in half, but that was pretty cool. Yeah,
very fun training scene here. And then we get the challenge to a duel between this guy. I brought out the action figure. In the toy package, he was just called the Heavy Mandalorian. But then later on, we found out his name was Paz Vizsla, and he's a descendant of Pre Vizsla, who is the character that Jon Favreau voiced in Star Wars: The Clone Wars. And this is his, must be his son or his grandson or whatever. And he's challenging Din Djarin to a duel to claim the Darksaber for himself and become, quote unquote, the Mandalore, which is the name for the ruler of Mandalore and the Mandalorian creed, I guess, or it's a creed, not a race or a religion or whatever they keep saying. Any thoughts on this duel?
I have one big question for you. So I'm a huge Hamilton fan. I know the 10 dual commandments. Is one of the Mandalorian commandments they have to take off their jetpack?
I was wondering about that, like why they had to both take off the jetpack, because it seemed like it was pretty useful to him when he got knocked off.
And there's only 3 of them, so it's not like they can make a rule. You fall, you're out. But no, They want you to die in the other 2.
Right. So we get into the duel, and there's a moment where it looks like Jon Favreau's character is going to win, but then Din Djarin kind of turns it around on him and ends up holding him at vibro knife point and doesn't kill him or anything, but he does once again claim the Darksaber for himself. But
I like the hollow shields where they put them in.
Oh yeah, that was cool. Kind of an energy shield thing that he had. So yeah, Paz Vizsla was fighting with a vibro knife and a little energy, like red energy shield thing. That was pretty cool. Was it red or blue? I don't remember.
I think it was blue.
Okay, it might have been blue. Yeah. And then Emily Swallow's character asks them both if they've ever removed their helmet, which we've seen her do before. It's part of the oath or whatever. Paz Vizsla says he has not. And then Din Djarin tells the truth. He decides to be honest about it. And he admits that he has, which we've seen him do a few times in The Mandalorian, where we've seen Pedro Pascal's face. And he gets kicked out of the club. He's out of this little Mandalorian sect that is run by the armorer. Yeah.
So, he defeats him. Stop, you win. Have you ever why does she ask this at this point?
It's just, we've seen her do this before. It's like a reaffirmation of the oath that I guess you have to pass that test every once in a while.
You're walking along on your way to the store, you get a phone call. Have you ever taken off your helmet?
Have you taken off the helmet between the last time I saw you and now?
Okay. It seems a little out of nowhere to me, but I guess that's the way Mandos work.
I guess it's kind of like similar to like going into confession if you're a Catholic. I don't know.
But you go. They don't.
You're not forgiven.
The priest doesn't find you and go, "Excuse me."
Right. And in this case, you're not forgiven if you've done something wrong. You're just immediately kicked out. But he does get to keep the Darksaber, which I thought was interesting. Like, well, yeah, you're not a Mandalorian anymore in our eyes, but you did technically win the Darksaber in a battle, so it's still yours. So he walks away with that and keeps all of his weapons and stuff, including the whatever she made for him in that little bindle that looks exactly like Grogu's head. So he walks off with that, and he goes. His ship got destroyed in Mandalorian season 2, so he goes and boards a commercial flight to Tatooine. Now, in the Slack discussion, you said that this was one of your favorite scenes. Why?
The scene where he's taking off all the. He wants to take his weapons on. It's a part of my religion. Who cares? And so, and it goes on and on. It's hilarious. It reminds me totally of a scene from The Naked Gun where a guy takes off his leg. It's so hilarious. And then when I was rewatching it yesterday, I noticed the payoff when he gets to Tatooine and he's presented with it. He looks at it, he just goes, "You gotta put it up."
Yeah, it was like, hilarious. I felt like I was trying to figure out what the point of this whole sequence was with him flying on this commercial space liner thing. And I think the idea was just to show us kind of the mundane aspects of the Star Wars universe. Like, if you have your own ship, you just come and go as you please and do whatever you want, fly wherever you want, take whatever you want. But if you're an average person who doesn't have a ship, you just have to fly like you would a human does on planet Earth, where you have to check your weapons.
Follow the rules.
Yeah. And walk through security and talk to the RX droid from Star Tours.
Who wants none of this religion stuff. He's like, you can talk to my supervisor and fly out tomorrow.
And then there's a kid in front of him in the plane, turning around and staring at him and waving, which just felt very real. It definitely felt like something I've experienced before, almost like kindergarten cop kind of thing where Arnold breaks the pencil.
So when he was looking at this kid, I mean, was he seeing? Was it taking him back to his Grogu feeling at all?
Oh, I didn't think of that, but maybe, yeah. I mean, in the following shot, he looks down at that little bindle.
Yeah, that's what made me think of that. That he's like, oh, children are our future. Treat them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. I had one of those kind of moments.
That had not occurred to me, but that is a very good point. If you're really connecting those dots, yeah, maybe that did remind him a little bit of Grogu for sure. So he lands on Tatooine. He has to reclaim his checked weapons, and then we get to our favorite friend, Peli Motto, played by comedian Amy Sedaris, who's definitely been growing on me a whole bunch and becoming one of my favorite supporting characters in these shows. She's so funny. I guarantee you a lot of her dialogue is improvised on the spot because she's such a great, hilarious person. What do you think of Peli Motto kind of in general?
I mean, I don't know who she is outside of this character. She is a little of her goes a long, long way.
Sure.
So there may have been a tad bit much here, but that's okay. She has some great lines. Furry is such a she has some great lines, but maybe a little much is all.
Okay. So she's fighting with a womp rat when Din Djarin enters and helps her out, and then he says he got a call from her about a replacement for his ship, the Razor Crest, and it turns out not to be a replacement Razor Crest, but a N1 Naboo starfighter, which everyone would immediately recognize from the aforementioned Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. This is the ship that Anakin Skywalker flies around in that Battle of Naboo, and it's kind of broken down. There's a lot
Is
of
it the
parts.
ship?
I don't know if it's supposed to be the ship, but it is the same model of ship. Now, oddly, we have seen Anakin's pod racer in The Mandalorian, because it's the little speeder that Timothy Oliphant's character Cobb Vanth is driving around on Tatooine, is built out of one of the engines of Anakin's pod racer. So if this turns out to be the ship, the same exact ship that Anakin flew in the Battle of Naboo, that would be a huge coincidence. I think it's just supposed to be the same model, if I had to guess. But yeah, it's really beat up, broken down. A lot of parts are all over the place, but she convinces him to buy it from her instead of a larger ship, which was his intent. Any thoughts on this whole? There's kind of like a 10-minute sequence here of them rebuilding the ship, which I really enjoyed. It's just a lot of talking, kind of like montage-esque, a lot of humor. What did you think of this sequence?
It's funny. The humor is great. When it starts with her explaining how she gets parts from the Jawas and everything with the Jawas, and her speaking Jawaese or whatever it's called.
Yes,
all of that.
It is called Jawaese.
It is. Wow.
Yes.
Thank you. All of that's really, really, really funny, and this whole sequence was quite enjoyable. And you get to see how to build a ship. You never know when that might come in handy. It's like shop class on Tatooine. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of like techno babble in this scene.
Babble is the right word for that.
Yeah. And I was even, because I do the Easter egg list that we're going to talk about in a bit, and I was going through every line and like looking it up on Wikipedia and being like, have they mentioned that specific part before? And a lot of it was all new. So there were things here and there that we'll talk about in the Easter eggs that were references to other stuff, but it's all like, mostly it's just techno babble, like I said. None of it really references anything that has come before, except for one or two little things. So then they take out, Din takes out the ship for a test flight. Sorry. And there's a big this is kind of the big climactic action scene of the movie where he flies through Beggar's Canyon, which we also saw in the pod race.
What's this creature called?
That is a Womp Rat.
Oh, that's boring. I knew that
one. So that's the same creature that she fought earlier in the episode in the junkyard there. And then, yeah, these are all very familiar locations. If you've seen episode 1 from that pod race sequence, they are paying tribute to that as he flies around the desert. Then he takes the ship up into space and flies around that same space liner that he flew on earlier. I guess that kid was on a layover in Tatooine and was heading somewhere else, right?
Yeah, he had other places to go. And you mentioned briefly earlier, I think we need to mention it for sure, is that kid in the concept art at the end was a human with an X-Wing hat on and playing with an X-Wing looking out the window.
Right.
And you could see his parents in the reflection. So interesting that switch.
Yeah, and I think you and Rebecca were both reminded of that scene in Superman, the movie, which I put in my Easter eggs, where it's actually the first scene where we see Superman as a teenager and he's running alongside the train and there's a kid.
Thank you.
Is that what you were thinking of?
In my mind, it was a plane, but you're right. It was the train.
Okay. Yeah. And he's looking at, no, it's a little kid who turns out to be Lois Lane because her parents call her Lois, and she's looking out the window at Superman running by, and they don't see it, but she does. Anyway.
Okay. Thank you.
Who knows if that was an intentional homage to that film, but certainly brought to mind that scene. Then, he gets accosted by those two X-Wing pilots, and this is a direct callback to an episode from season 2 of The Mandalorian, where this exact same situation happened. Only that time he was in his much slower moving at sublight Razor Crest ship, and this time he's in the Naboo starfighter, which is souped up, hot rod basically, and he can just take off and outrun them, and they decide not to follow him because they don't want to do the paperwork. What did you think of this scene?
I mean, this thing can go light speed without an assistance ring, so that's pretty impressive. What is that ring called?
The hyperspace docking ring.
The docking ring. Yeah. This was a fun scene just to hear the banter between them. I was confused. I mean, about these pilots, because the one's like, let's just let them go. But then your voice sounds familiar. I don't know. Was he trying to be ominous? Is there something more going on here, or is this scene just what it is at face value?
So I think what's going on there is that character played by the guy from Kim's Convenience is remembering that he has interacted with Din Djarin before. And he knows that, he's looking over through the cockpit. He can see the helmet. He knows that it's him. But he also remembers, because if you rewatch that episode that he was in previously where they talked to each other, he found out that Din Djarin actually saved the life of a New Republic security officer in that episode, The Prisoner. He saw the security footage of that, and that's why he let him go then. And I think that's kind of why he lets him go here as well. Now, he says to his partner that it was just because he doesn't want to do the paperwork or whatever, but I think he's letting him off the hook for that same assist with those criminals back in The Prisoner episode.
See, that should have been on the previously on. It's stuff from Mandalorian.
Right. They didn't want to tip their hand too much that these guys were going to show up. But yeah, it's in my Easter eggs. But the other guy, the other pilot, is played by the actor who is the stand-in for Mark Hamill in the season 2 finale of The Mandalorian, which I thought was pretty fun.
That's pretty awesome.
Easter egg there. That brings us pretty much to the final scene in the episode, which is Fennec Shand showing up at Peli Motto's junk shop, mechanic shop there, and tying us back into the Book of Boba Fett. And she offers Din Djarin a place on the crew to help out Boba Fett in his fight against the Pike Syndicate, and offers to pay him because Boba Fett has money now. And Din basically says, I'll do it for free to repay him, I think, for helping out in rescuing Grogu in The Mandalorian. And he says, first, I'm going to go visit my little friend. And that's pretty much the end of the episode. What did you think of the ending?
I'm glad that we had a little bit of Book of Boba Fett here at some point. I love the humor again, and I guess I'm being too hard on this woman because she provided some of the best moments. But when she's like, "Oh, some woman came by to see you, but we locked her out," and yada yada yada, and then she's just Mando, that's pretty funny. And she's yelling at the droid, "I thought I told you." So, it's a nice ending. Looking forward to him joining the fight. You keep playing down the Pike Syndicate aspect of this whole thing, but I'm excited about it. I like that there's just this little tiny plot happening here. I really enjoy that. Marvel is so full of boom. Everything is a matter of the existence of the universe. So I'm happy when we can get something on Disney Plus that's much smaller.
Justin said there was millions of sighs from fangirls that we didn't actually get to see Grogu in this episode. And yeah, that kind of brings me to my question. I'll skip the Easter eggs for now and just ask, do you think we're going to see Grogu in the Book of Boba Fett? And do we even want to?
I'll answer the second part of that question first. I don't want to. This is not his show. So no, I definitely don't want to. Do I think we will? No.
So they set up this whole thing where she retrofitted or refitted the droid pod of the ship to have like a little dome on it. And all I could picture was Grogu in his little chainmail armor sitting back there in that little dome on the N1 Naboo starfighter. I guarantee that's going to happen at some point. I can't tell you if it's going to happen in the Book of Boba Fett or in the Mandalorian proper, but I know that's going to happen. If that's going to happen in this series, I don't know.
Yeah, here's my bold prediction. Next week starts with 2 months later, and he's back, and they're fighting, and then Mandalorian season 3.
We see what happened.
Yeah, that's a dumb prediction, but I'm going with it.
I like that idea, even if it's not 2 months or like if it's like 2 weeks even.
Or whatever, but yeah, don't show him whatever he's doing right now. Save that for Mandalorian. Next week, let's get back to battling the Pikes with Mando's help.
I like that idea, and I kind of hope they do it that way as well. I think it was nice to have this kind of interlude episode where we spent all this time with the Mandalorian, Din Djarin, but I think that's enough of that for Book of Boba Fett. Let's get back to that main story. I'm 100% with you on that for sure.
All right, smart man.
So my Easter egg list this week is daunting. I came up with 65 things. Now these aren't all Easter eggs because I call it Easter eggs allusions, and Star Wars references. So it's basically anything that I haven't mentioned before on one of these lists that came up in this episode. And I don't know if we want to go through the whole thing. There's a lot of stuff that we've talked about already. I think the big things that I want to mention are the BD droid that Pelimato has in her shop, which is a big reference to the Jedi Fallen Order video game. I know a lot of people were super, super excited about that. Seeing that character show up, because they are drawing from all these different parts of, there you go, there's the image of the BD droid. So that's BD1 in Jedi Fallen Order, and this one is of the same series, though probably not the same droid. People are excited that they're drawing from the books, the comics, all the Star Wars movies and the TV shows to pull all these different Easter eggs and references from.
Come back, Mike. Please come back, Mike. I can solo a lot of shows, but not this one. So I expect Mike will be back in just a moment. We're having a technical issue. You can see this Easter egg article, of course, is available on Laughing Place. There are 65 from this episode. There are 65 from this episode. And Mike's about to go through a few of them, I hope, if he comes back in just a moment. Although wouldn't it be ironic if I'm the one that's actually frozen? But, and Mike's nice enough to go find images from other aspects of Star Wars to bring in here. More or less chronological, or not even Star Wars. You mentioned earlier, Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. And you can see that here. I think Mike has disappeared, so I expect he'll be back in just a moment. And there he is. Man, wonder why I was nervous.
So my internet dropped out there for a minute. I'll make an edit in the audio version. For your patience.
But make sure you listen so you can see how great I did covering for you.
Thank you very much. But yeah, I think I'll just say, if you're interested in reading more of all these little Easter eggs and allusions and stuff, just visit laughingplace.com. The whole list is up there. 65 things this week. Usually it's been averaging around 25 to 30. So this was a huge episode for little hints and nods. The other one I would say is, if I want to point it out here, it's that big metal pole that the Jawas bring in to give to Din Djarin, or Pelimato brings it in to give to Din Djarin to put on the ship. That's actually the pole that they use to brace the walls of the trash compactor, the garbage masher on the Death Star. And we've actually seen that before in The Mandalorian. If you go back and watch some of the early episodes, there's one leaning against the wall in Navarro City in The Mandalorian. So they've used that as an Easter egg before, but here we actually got to find out its name. So it is a cryogenic density combustion booster. So there you go.
I mean, we knew that intuitively, but yeah, it's nice of them to make sure.
Did you recognize that when that came up on screen, Doobie? No.
Oh, no. Oh, no. I barely recognized Mandalorian when he came up on screen.
So to kind of wrap up our discussion of this episode, I want to ask if you think it's okay to have a episode of the Book of Boba Fett without Boba Fett in it. So we've kind of talked about this a little bit already. Boba Fett does not show up at all in this episode. They do mention him by name, but he's not on screen. Is that acceptable?
That's more than acceptable, as long as it's a setup for a great 2 episodes to come. That is totally fine. Just like I mentioned in a couple of great Lost episodes, nothing wrong. It just shows how great this universe is.
Absolutely agreed. Yeah, I think it's totally fine. Again, I agree with you that they shouldn't do too much more without Boba Fett involved. I like this interlude and looking forward to getting back into that story. Lastly, is there anything else that you are hoping or expecting to happen in the final 2 episodes coming up of the Book of Boba Fett?
Like I said, I'm hoping, just like you just said, that we get back to Boba Fett and Pike. I want to see some more Jawas. I want to see some more mayors and crime bosses and all that kind of fun stuff that's here on Tatooine. I want to go back to the bar and see Hooter. So I want to get back to the normal stuff. Maybe I can do without the people on the speeder bikes, but I want to get back to our main story now with Mandalorian a part of it, and let's kick some pike booty.
We got to see Boba Fett riding that Rancor. That has to happen.
Of course.
As I keep calling it, what is, boy, I got another edit point here. Chekhov's Rancor is what
Chekhov's
I call it.
Rancor, yes.
To use a theatrical, yeah.
There's always still that tiny possibility. You know, you talked about in a previous episode how Danny Trejo, I think that's his name, gave this a look. I mean, maybe that Rancor is not on his side. You know?
That's right. Yeah, we definitely have a little bit more to do with the Rancor, for sure. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion of Chapter 5, Return of the Mandalorian from the Book of Boba Fett on Disney+. Justin J. Smith said, imagine Din Djarin and Boba Fett in a buddy comedy. Yeah, if they were buddy cops riding around Mos Espa, busting heads, that'd be pretty fun.
That would be a very quiet TV show.
That's, yeah, both guys are not talkative, I guess, is what you
loquacious. They're not too loquacious.
That brings us to our final segment here on Who's the Bossk, and that's called, I almost forgot the name of my own podcast. That's where my brain is at today. First Steps into a Larger World. This is where we talk about the media that we're consuming and or enjoying outside of Star Wars. My example this week is a Netflix series that we are checking out called Archive 81. And this is like a horror / mystery series. It's very eerie. It's very spooky. And I would say it actually shares some DNA with Lost. And that's what appeals to me about it quite a bit. It has like underground bunkers. It has old VHS tapes and stuff. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff in it. It's also got a bit of like Rosemary's Baby. You ever see that?
No. Familiar. But no.
Yeah. It's like Lost meets Rosemary's Baby. That's how I would describe it. I'm enjoying it so far. We're about halfway through the series. There's 8 episodes on Netflix. That's my recommendation for this week. Doobie, what have you been watching, reading, enjoying?
I checked out Archive 81 for just a few minutes and it didn't click right away. But based on your description, I'm going to give it a full episode trial. I watched another contained series, this one on Sundance called The Pact. Have you heard of that one?
I have not.
A young brewery boss is found dead. 4 of his employees who had somehow been involved form a pact to keep it to themselves. It's a British show, so even though it's, you know, kind of, it's not very deep. It's the kind of stuff you've seen before, but it's British, so it sounds much more highfalutin than it actually is. And, you know, it's not the typical twists and turns throughout. I believe it's 8 episodes, but it kept me riveted throughout. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The Pact on Sundance.
On the Sundance channel?
It's a Sundance Now exclusive, so I guess you have to actually subscribe to Sundance.
Okay. I don't know if we have that subscription. We got a bunch of them, but I don't think that's one of them. But
yeah, so that's 7-day trial. If
we do the trial, that will be on my list to check it out. Okay, that's going to bring us to the end of this week's episode of Who's the Bossk. I want to thank my guest, Doobie Moseley, for doing an amazing job filling in for Rebecca Moseley on the tech and the images and everything, and also being my guest and chatting about Star Wars with me again. Thank you, Doobie.
It was my pleasure. I look forward to questions set number 4.
Next year. You got a whole year to bone up on your Star Wars for next time. It's all there on Disney+. Okay, my name is Mike Celestino. As always, please visit laughingplace.com for all your Disney news and opinions. Next week on Who's the Bossk, we'll be talking about the penultimate episode of the Book of Boba Fett. We went this whole episode without calling it the anti-penultimate episode of Book of Boba Fett. Well, now we have. Next week's the penultimate one, episode 6. So check that out on Who's the Bossk next week. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.